Kevin Swart to join us. He's a director at PG Building Glass. Now, Kevin and I have been on radio together, and we've done one of these seminars, so hopefully we're getting good at this.
I hope so, yeah.
Kevin has a device here that he's going to demonstrate a little bit later. But maybe tell us what it is, Kevin, and then we'll put it away somewhere and we'll do it after the seminar.
Thanks, Brad. It's just for you people that are designing your homes and that to understand what the different types of glasses can do. So I brought along a box with a simple halogen light in it, and we'll plug it in. And it's just to feel the difference between glass A and glass B, and I'll explain to you what glass A's got into it and what glass B's got into it. Both of them very clear, but the one is going to keep out a lot more heat and insulate far better in your home. Okay.
Thanks, Kevin. So what we're going to do is Kevin has some slides in the background, and I'm going to chat to Kevin as we go, ask questions and so on. It would be better if we waited in the audience till we finished and then afterwards ask questions. But if you're really eager and you think you're going to forget, just put up your hand and we'll have a chat. Kevin, I understand PG. I think if people haven't heard of PG, then we weren't listening properly. I mean, that's an iconic brand, and you guys have been around a long time.
Yeah, that's correct, Graham. About, forget the number now, but it's over 100 years, 110 years I think it is, that we've been around.
And then one of the simplest questions, I suppose, is how do you make glass? Because some of us think it's rolled or it's melted something, but how do you make it?
Basic glass that is then turned into other functional glass is the sand, silica sand, that's basic ingredient. It's like making a cake almost. There's a whole lot of different ingredients that are put in. But essentially it is melted sand that is then floated on a bed of tin and then annealed slowly to come out as what you see is a crystal clear, or almost crystal clear, very smooth finished product called float glass.
Is the melted or molten tin like a perfect surface? Is that?
It's the perfect density of material to float it on. It is a perfect surface, so it's very still inside. That's where the smoothness of the glass comes from.
Okay, so Kevin, what we're going to do is run through some of your slides, and as we go, we may stop and just talk about it in a little bit more detail.
Okay. So what I want to talk to you about today is a new residential range that we've recently introduced into all of our multitude of products. We found that it is quite a complex subject for people that aren't just wanting to close the hole with a piece of clear float, and the knowledge of glass products and their functionality is very few and far between. So what we've done is we've come up, and that's pretty much what we're going to demonstrate today, is the 4 different glasses with different heat eliminations and insulation values, all in double glazing, which seems to be the buzzword amongst everybody wanting to know what this double glazing is. Where it started from was legislation that Graham spoke about earlier, where architects are now required to submit with their plans the calculations for the windows and framing. And we found that normal float glass as we know it, or a tinted glass, doesn't work anymore. So we've, in understanding with what the energy requirements are in the legislation, we've developed 4 products that is easy to choose from, all very clear, so there's no complexities about colors. Obviously our range is a lot wider than 4 products, but it does allow people, without getting too involved, to choose the right product from the 4 that we've introduced. What we've taken into consideration is the insulation value, how much heat is going to pass through the glass, and that is all done in the calculations in SANS 204. Obviously, and I'm sure the window frame people will talk about, the glass can only be as good as the frame, and that's first got to pass the air and water infiltration test before you can consider doing SANS 204 calculations, which the architect has to do.
Kevin, just a question on double glazing, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I know the guys from Tiva and Waspika will touch on this, is you've got the glass itself, and then you have the frame that holds the glass.
That's correct.
And Is it key that these two work together, or can you get double glazing glass that's just a piece of glass but it happens to be double glazed, or is it the two have to hang together?
No, there certainly is the two that go together, and the calculations are based on both the glass and the framing type. The conductivity, or what transfers through the glass and the aluminium or plastic, or whatever the case may be, that the two guys will talk about today, I'm sure, is very different to the glass. So that calculation combines both glass and framing material.
Has the price come down? I'm going to just talk about glass because the other guys will talk about technology in windows. Because a couple of years ago, if you mentioned double glazing, everyone just shut down because they said, no, it's too expensive. Has it become more cost effective?
Most certainly, we identify that and recognize that in order for us to sell a product that is very new in a market that is still in a growth phase, unlike Europe where every single house has double glazing, we know that the economies of scale have not really allowed us to have pricing that is something that is affordable for most homes. So we've taken a step to go out there to say that the prices of our double glazing we're going to make as low as we possibly can, even though the volumes aren't there to see a market growth. That's why you'll see the pricing that you may have a misconception that it's extremely expensive as it was a number of years ago. Well, just about anybody can make a double glazed unit. It's quite simple with two pieces of glass and some kind of a spacing material with a glue and put it together in your garage. The real question comes about when you're saying, how long is this glass going to last? Our warranties are 10 years, which I don't think you're going to get from anybody that's doing the garage, and if you do get it, they may not be around. So it's very important to consider who you partner with and which glass you choose. We have Sorry, you carry on. So we have state-of-the-art equipment. As new as 2 weeks' time, we're getting another double glazed line that will be coming into Gauteng. And the reason for that is that we want to make sure that the products that we are selling are unsurpassed in quality and performance.
The guarantee, what would go wrong with if we look at that glass there, it's got a spacer in it and there's two pieces of glass, that's guaranteed for 10 years. What would typically go wrong with someone that's made it in their garage?
So typically what you've got to make sure is that your dehydrated airspace remains just that. And in order to ensure that, you've got to make sure that your primary and your secondary seal that is encompassed into the unit is going to last that long. And what you see in the spacer there is what is a desiccant. So as soon as that becomes saturated, if the air is allowed to come into the dehydrated space, you're going to get fogging, condensation within the unit, and that's what you call a failed unit. Okay, just to give you some idea from an insulation point of view, we won't get into technical details, but essentially a float glass has a insulation value of 5.8 watts per square meter per temperature difference between inside and outside. So that's just a calculation where you take the 5.8 watts times the square meter of glazing and the temperature inside to outside. You normally can calculate on a 10 degree difference, summer or winter. Obviously that gets a lot higher in cold climates where it's 0 outside and you're trying to keep 22 inside. So once you start timing that out, and then you calculate in light bulbs, you know how hot a light bulb gets when you put your hands around it, just compare the 5.8 down to our superior product, which we're quoting at 1.65, but you can get it down to as low as 1 with fancy gases in the airspace.
Before we move on, that glass, you supplying this glass to window manufacturers as two pieces of glass?
It's two pieces of glass with a space as a sealed unit.
Yeah.
As a unit, that is correct, yes.
And then the window manufacturer, fabricator is putting that into their frame.
That is correct.
So
yes.
the window manufacturer is not separating these two pieces of glass.
Absolutely.
It comes like that.
That's a finished unit that we sell on to the fabricators.
Yeah. So I guess, and I know we're going to ask the question to these guys just now, is if this becomes more cost efficient, the actual glass, obviously they need frames and extrusions that accommodate a bigger element. But the whole thing around getting the thing more cost effective, it's going in the right direction.
That's correct. And you've also got to weigh up, when we start talking about cost, yes, there is obviously, you have got two pieces of glass there and they are functional glass products. So yes, you are going to pay more. But given the legislation, you are going to have something, some sort of fancier glass than just normal glass in your windows, because the calculations say that. And that's where you've got to start comparing, not a float glass versus this fancy double glazed unit. Very different. And on top of that, you've got to consider very important things these days, is that because it is going to come a reality, we are quite certain of that. And what you've got to consider is what is your initial outlay, what energy you're going to save in your home, and then when you resell your house, what is that extra value that you're going to get from double glazing and having the correct specification glass in your home, and most importantly, the comfort. I'm not sure if any of you of the last week have been very cold in your homes. I certainly have, because I don't have the right glass in my house. But it is something to consider, that you wouldn't have that if you had the correct insulation. When I talk about that, glass plays a major part of that, because it does form part about 20 to 25% of a floor to window ratio in the homes that I'm sure that you people will be looking to build. That's just to give you, leading on from the slide before, is to say, well, you got from 5.8 to 1.65, and I mentioned as low as 1. Glass in its natural, or its purest form, is a very good conductor. So you can see that moving from a formal glass to a 19 is going to improve by 0.4 of a watt. So just increasing the thickness of glass don't do it. You've got to have that dehydrated airspace and the fancy coatings that we put onto the glass. That's what leads to incorrect specification. Now, when we talk about double glazing, I always like to make the point that double glazing is not a one-fit solution for all. It's very dependent on the orientation of your home, where the sun strike is. For example, a west facade that gets very hot in the afternoon may have a very different specification to the south with no sun. So there's cost-saving initiatives that can be designed, where you just have a double glazed unit with two clear glasses on the south, but the fancier one on the west. And that's why the products we've come up with are all very clear, so that you can have that not one-fits-all type of scenario. And if you choose to use our Smart Glass X2 double glazing, that's what that's how you'll live, rather than the picture before.
We always need to be careful of costs, and I know we say on our radio show, we use the term, how long's a piece of string, because different applications, different structures, and so on. But if you took two pieces of 6mm glass as a double glazed unit, as opposed to one 6mm, is it about twice the price?
Depending on if you just let's take it as standard glass, two standard glasses versus one standard 6mm as a float, it's probably about 3 to 4 times as much. But when you start talking about the clear low E single glaze versus the double glazing, it's only about 1.5 times now, and that's because we've made the product a lot more accessible.
Yeah. So I guess that ratio of 3 to 4 times more is because you have to manufacture, get this vacuum into, or not a vacuum, but this clear air between the two pieces of glass.
That's correct, and then obviously the sealing materials and all that. Yeah. So, but having said that, what you're getting out of a 6mm glass is closing a hole and letting light through. You cannot compare that with what a double glazed unit is going to do for you. Just, I'm not sure if how far you are with your building, but those who have been in contact with the architects, I'm sure they've mentioned from a glass perspective that their calculations have come up with the single low E glass. Now, a single low E product is something that we do sell. It's a hard-coated low E that has to be glazed so that it's exposed to the inner surface of the home in order for it to work. So the drawbacks of, we go to so first of all, the specification there, you can see that they are very similar all the way through, forgetting the technologies involved there, but the U value on the double glazed unit is far better than the single low E. And leading on from that, if you go to the next slide, is that single low E is a tested value in a perfect condition, where the coating that is exposed is only as good as it's been cleaned. So if it gets condensation on it, which will happen, then that U value starts to increase because the water's on there covering the surface. So those are just some considerations. I'm not saying there's anything specifically wrong with single OE, which is a slightly cheaper option. But those are the things you've got to consider. And if someone does decide to clean your window with a pot scour or something sticky on it, it will cause damage and become unsightly in the home. Where double glazing, you don't have that. That's just a quick summary of the products that we are offering for the residential. In the unit here, we've got what we call a standard, and then we've got in the other side is our elite product. And just moving from the standard to the elite, you'll feel the difference of the heat that's being transferred through the glass, where I've mentioned that our standard is really for where you've got no sunstrike, you've got nice overhangs on the south facade, that you would consider that product. And primarily then for your insulation in winter. If you're looking for something that you're going to keep heat out in summer, that's where you move along the chain. If you've got sufficient overhangs, well-designed home that you don't have that, then yes, the clear would work because you're insulating. And if it does get hot in summer, we all open our windows. We've got a nice climate, you open the stacking doors, all that. But when you close up, and for the months of winter, you're going to be well insulated. Our products all come with a 10-year warranty, which is passed on to the glazing contractors or fabricators. So you've got peace of mind that any manufacturing defect that happens within the 10-year period, you are covered by that. And what we started out with was we've been 120 years around, so hopefully we've all passed on by the time the group is eventually closed, which the garage door guy, I don't know if he's going to last another 100 years. And finally, we are in the process with this new range that we are actually in the throes of launching. It's no official launch yet, but the products are available, is that we are going to appoint accredited installers, that we've first of all been to their premises, inspected, trained, and they will be available on our website from the end of August. Once we've appointed them, we are looking at in discussions with them. Once that's complete, you'll be able to choose a glazing contractor from our website that we are backing.
Kevin, thanks very much.
That's my story.
Are there any questions for Kevin?
I should know, is there an industry standard for the space between the two glasses?
In the double glaze unit?
Yes.
The spacing does help a little bit with the insulation value. The optimum or the standard for us is 12 millimeter. If you move to 16, which a lot of the frames wouldn't be able to accommodate, you get a slight improvement, but it's not really worth the while. When you consider that you've moved from the 5.8 to 1.6, for example, you may get a 1.63 or something like that. So the other improvement where they are looking to get the absolute maximum of the glass, like in very cold climates, is they introduce gas, which is heavier is heavier and helps to insulate. So you'll see specifications in Europe or any such cold climates is that they have 90% argon, 10% air within the space to improve the U value. The standard is 12.
But nothing less than 12, because otherwise it kind of defeats the object. Am I correct? Or
Sorry, say again?
nothing less than 12.
Again, I wouldn't go, the minimum is 6 that you'll see in your Coca-Cola fridges in the stores, but I wouldn't go there. I would start with 10,
Okay.
not going less than 10, so you have a 10, 12 or 16 spacer, and the difference between that is negligible. Once you start going over 16, you start getting currents, which then starts affecting when you have the wider gaps. And then too thin, you haven't got enough for the glass to be dehydrated. And so the spaces are 6, 8, 10, 12, 16 basically. But I would recommend as much as the frames can accommodate, which we know that the majority can, is have a 12 mil spacer. If the framing that you choose for a cheaper frame can only accommodate 8 or 10, you'll be okay.
Kevin, thank you. Don't go and sit down again, Kev. Please stay with us.
Yeah, sure.
And if anything comes to mind, Kevin's not going anywhere. And we'll all be here after the seminar, including a demonstration here where Kevin will show you the difference between the two glazing options on either side of that box. Thanks.